My name is Elena Carter. I'm 31 years old. Last Thursday night, I was sitting alone in my apartment in Tacoma, Washington, finishing paperwork for work when my phone started vibrating on the table. It didn't stop. One call, then another, then another. By the time I picked it up, I had 43 missed calls, all from numbers with the same Ohio area code, people I hadn't spoken to in 7 years. I sat there for a long time before listening to the first voicemail. I expected anger, maybe accusations, maybe silence. What I heard instead was the same sentence, over and over, in different voices. Not one person said, "I'm sorry." Every message ended with the same 2 words. "Help me." I put the phone face down and didn't move for a while. 7 years earlier, I had left my parents' house with 1 suitcase, $200 in cash, and no plan except getting as far away as possible. My family told everyone back home that I wasn't well, that I needed treatment, that they were worried about me. They weren't worried. They were relieved. And they stayed relieved until my older sister searched my name online last week. Before I explain why those 43 voicemails happened in one night, I need to go back to the night everything broke. November. Cold enough that the windows in my mother's dining room fogged from the heat inside. Our house in Millfield, Ohio, was the kind where holidays always looked perfect from the outside. Long table, matching plates, too many chairs squeezed together. 15 people that night. My mother at the head of the table, pouring wine like the bottle owed her money. My father quiet in his usual seat near the window. My sister Rachel talking about her new job. My younger brother scrolling his phone under the table, thinking nobody noticed. I was 24, working 2 jobs, saving every dollar I could. I remember the smell of turkey and candles, the sound of forks on plates, the way nobody asked me anything. That wasn't new. At some point during dessert, when the room finally got quiet enough to speak without interrupting someone else, I asked a question I had been holding for months. Just one question. "Mom, do you remember the education fund Grandma set up for me?" The room went still. Not the normal kind of quiet. The kind where everyone knows something is about to go wrong, but no one wants to be the first to move. My mother set her coffee cup down very slowly. Then she smiled. It was the same smile she used when she wanted everyone else to agree with her before she even said anything. She looked around the table before she looked at me. And then she said, "This is exactly what I mean when I say Elena's been acting unstable lately." No one spoke. Not my father. Not my sister. Not my aunt sitting next to me. I felt 15 pairs of eyes land on me at the same time, like I had just broken something expensive. I didn't argue. I stood up, picked up my plate, and walked to the kitchen. The faucet was running while I rinsed dishes, but the doorway to the dining room was still open. And I could hear my mother talking to my aunt in a low voice. "The money went to Rachel's tuition and her car," she said. "Elena didn't need it. She wasn't going anywhere anyway." I turned the water off. Grandma had told me herself, 2 years before she died, that she left $12,000 for each of us. Separate accounts. Separate names. Nobody could touch it but us. Somebody had touched it. I dried my hands, walked back into the dining room, and stood at the end of the table. "That fund was mine," I said. "Grandma left it to me." My mother didn't raise her voice. She never did when she wanted to win. "You're being dramatic again," she said. "You always make everything about money." I remember looking at my father. He stared at the table. I remember looking at my sister. She didn't look up. 10 minutes later, my mother asked everyone to come into the living room. I knew what that meant. I had seen this before. Different holiday, different reason, same performance. She stood in the center of the room, holding a napkin in her hand like she might cry. I didn't want to say anything, she told everyone, but Elena hasn't been herself lately. She's been having episodes. Nobody asked what she meant. Nobody asked if I was okay. Nobody asked anything. I went upstairs, packed 1 suitcase, took the cash I had in my drawer, grabbed the small wooden box my grandmother left me that I still hadn't opened. When I came back down, my mother was standing by the door. "If you walk out," she said, "don't bother coming back." I didn't slam the door. I closed it quietly. Outside, it was snowing. I had $200, one suitcase, and nowhere to go. That was the last night I spoke to my family. And I didn't hear their voices again until the night my phone filled with 43 voicemails. Then I waited. I bought the bus ticket the same night. The station was 20 minutes from my parents' house near the highway, the kind of place with flickering lights and bending machines that never worked right. I didn't choose the destination for any meaningful reason. I chose it because it was the farthest city I could afford. Tacoma, Washington. 36 hours on a bus with my suitcase between my knees and my grandmother's wooden box in my lap. I didn't sleep much. Mostly I watched the window. Flat fields, gas stations, rest stops that all smelled the same. At one stop in Nebraska, an older woman sitting next to me offered half of her sandwich without asking any questions. I took it, said thank you, and ate it in 3 bites. She didn't ask why I was crying. She just handed me a napkin and looked back out the window. Sometimes strangers know exactly how much silence to give you. My first night in Tacoma was in a women's shelter 2 blocks from the train tracks. The building smelled like detergent and old carpet. The bed had a thin blanket and a pillow that felt like it had been washed too many times. I slept anyway, not because I was comfortable, because I was too tired to stay awake. The next 2 weeks were a routine. Wake up early. Walk everywhere. Fill out applications. Write the same information on every form. Name, age, address. When the form asked for emergency contact, I left it blank. I left it blank for almost 2 years. I found my first job at a small consulting office on the 3rd floor of an old warehouse downtown. 8 employees. 1 printer that jammed every other day. A front desk with a chair that squeaked every time I moved. They needed someone to answer phones and organize files. I needed a paycheck. The first week, I noticed the filing cabinet didn't make sense. Folders in the wrong drawers. Clients listed twice. Invoices missing. No one asked me to fix it. I stayed late one night and did it anyway. By Friday, 3 years of files were sorted, labeled, and cross-checked. On Monday morning, the owner of the company stopped at my desk and looked at the cabinet for a long time. Her name was Margaret Hale. She didn't smile. She just pulled a chair over and sat down across from me. "You reorganized everything?" she asked. "Yes." "Why?" I thought about that for a second. "Because it was wrong." She nodded once, like that was the only answer she needed. "Good," she said. "Then tell me what else is wrong." That was the first time in my life someone asked me that without sounding annoyed. I started noticing things after that. Numbers that didn't match. Deadlines that weren't written down. Clients waiting for calls nobody made. I wrote everything in a notebook. Not because anyone told me to, because I didn't want to feel out of control again. At night, I took online classes through the community college. Business basics, accounting, project management. I paid for each class one at a time. No loans. No help. Just smaller paychecks for a while. My apartment that first year was a shared place above a grocery store. 2 bedrooms. 1 kitchen light that buzzed when it was on too long. My roommate worked nights, so most evenings I sat alone at the table with a laptop, eating whatever was cheapest that week. Rice, pasta, eggs. It wasn't a bad life. It was quiet, and the quiet felt safe. For the first time, nobody was telling me what I was doing wrong. Nobody was watching how I talked, or what I said, or how I sat at the table. Nobody called me dramatic. Nobody called me unstable. After a few months, I checked social media once. Just once. My mother had posted in the family group, "Please keep Elena in your prayers. She's going through a difficult time, and we just hope she's safe wherever she is." Over 100 reactions. Comments from relatives, neighbors, people from church. "She's lucky to have such a strong mother. Praying for your family. Hope she gets the help she needs." My brother had commented too. "She always was the dramatic one." 47 likes. I deleted my account that night. After that, I stopped looking back. No calls. No letters. No messages. 7 years of silence. People think no contact feels like freedom right away. It doesn't. It feels like walking without a map. Every form asking for family information. Every holiday where everyone else had somewhere to go. Every time I got sick and had to decide if I could afford a doctor. There's a low hum that never goes away when you know there are people somewhere telling a story about you, and you don't get to correct any of it. But the silence also gave me something I had never had before. Space. The first morning I woke up in Tacoma without that tight feeling in my chest, I remember lying there and realizing something strange. My mother's voice wasn't in my head. That constant sentence I grew up hearing, "You're not enough. You're not enough. You're not enough." It was gone. Not because anything got better. Just because I was far enough away that the echo couldn't reach me anymore. At work, Margaret started giving me more responsibility. First small tasks, then client reports, then budgets. She never praised me out loud. She never made speeches. She just handed me more work. And every time she did, I understood what it meant. She trusted me. 3 years after I started there, I finished my degree, printed the diploma at a copy shop, put it in a cheap frame, hung it on the wall in my office. Margaret walked in the next morning, looked at it, and nodded. "Good," she said. Then she sat down across from me. "How does project manager sound?" That was the moment my life started to change in ways my family never imagined. And the strange thing is, they still didn't know. Not for 7 years. Not until the day my sister sat down at her kitchen table, typed my name into a search bar, and everything they believed about me stopped making sense. That was the day the phone started ringing again. And this time, they weren't calling to check on me. By the time my sister searched my name online, my life looked nothing like the one I left behind. Not dramatic. Not flashy. Just structured. The consulting firm had grown from 8 people to more than 50. We moved into a larger office near the waterfront, glass walls, clean desks, everything labeled. I liked labels. They meant things were where they were supposed to be. My title was operations manager by then, which mostly meant I spent my days looking at numbers, schedules, contracts, and making sure nothing fell apart without anyone noticing. I wasn't the face of the company. I wasn't the one giving speeches. I was the one checking the details after everyone else thought the work was done. Margaret used to say, most problems aren't loud. They're quiet until the day they cost you money. I understood that. I had grown up in a house where problems stayed quiet until they exploded at the dinner table. So I learned to look early. Every morning I followed the same routine. Coffee, email, calendar, reports, then the ledger. Always the ledger. Numbers told the truth even when people didn't. Around year 5, Margaret called me into her office one afternoon. She closed the door, which she almost never did. There was a folder on her desk. Not thick, not thin either. She slid it toward me without saying anything. Inside were 3 quarterly reports, 2 client contracts, and a printout from the accounting system. I flipped through them slowly. Didn't rush. Never rush when paperwork is involved. On the second page, I saw it. A payment entered twice. Different dates. Same amount. On the third page, the same client listed under 2 project codes. On the last sheet, the totals didn't match the invoice summary. I looked up. "How long has this been happening?" I asked. Margaret leaned back in her chair. 6 months. "You knew." I suspected. "I wanted to see if you would catch it." I nodded once and closed the folder. "Give me until tomorrow," I said. That night I stayed at the office until almost 10. Pulled every invoice, every contract, every payment log, made a list. Step 1, confirm entries. Step 2, trace duplicates. Step 3, match signatures. Step 4, calculate loss. By the time I finished, I had 3 pages of notes and a total at the bottom. $18,420. Not missing. Misapplied. No one stealing. Just no one paying attention. The next morning, I put the folder back on Margaret's desk with my notes clipped to the front. She read the first page, then the second. Then she looked up at me the way she always did when she had already made a decision. "You know what this means," she said. "Yes." "What?" "You need someone whose job is to make sure this never happens again." She smiled a little. "Exactly." 2 weeks later, my title changed again. Director of Operations. No announcement. No celebration. Just a new line on the org chart and a different set of keys. Keys to the storage room. Keys to the records office. Keys to the file cabinets nobody else wanted to deal with. I liked keys. They meant responsibility. Around the same time, the company was featured in a regional business magazine. Nothing big, just an article about small consulting firms helping rural towns apply for development grants. There was a photo of the leadership team, my name under it. That photo stayed online. For months. For a year. For 7 years. Nobody in my family saw it. Not my mother. Not my father. Not my sister. Not my brother. 7 years of believing I was still the girl who walked out of the house with one suitcase. 7 years of telling people I was unstable. 7 years of never once checking if the story was true. Until my sister needed something. I learned later what happened that afternoon. She was sitting at her kitchen table with a stack of bills. Mortgage behind. Credit cards maxed. Car payment late. She needed a cosigner for a new loan. My mother's credit was already damaged. My father was retired. My brother still owed student loans. That left one name. Mine. Not because she missed me. Because she remembered I existed. She typed Elena Carter into the search bar. First result, my LinkedIn page. Second, the magazine article. Third, the company website. My photo. My title. My office number. She stared at the screen for a long time. Then she picked up her phone and called my mother. I wasn't there, but I know what was said. My aunt told me later. She's not in treatment, my sister said. What? My mother asked. She's a director. She works for some consulting company. She's doing well. There was a long silence on the line. Then my mother said one sentence. That's not possible. Not how's she. Not is she okay. Just, that's not possible. Because if it was possible, then the story she told everyone for 7 years wasn't true. That evening, the calls started. I was in a conference room finishing a meeting when my phone buzzed in my pocket. Once. Then again. Then again. When the meeting ended, I looked at the screen. Missed call. Missed call. Missed call. Same area code. Ohio. By the time I got back to my office, there were 12. By the time I sat down, there were 23. By the time I locked the door and put the phone on the desk, there were 43. I didn't call back. I pressed play on the first voicemail. My sister's voice. Careful. Too friendly. Hey Elena, it's Rachel. I know it's been a while. I really need to talk to you about something. Call me back. Next message. My father. Slow. Uncomfortable. Your mother and I, well, the family's going through a hard time. We could use your help. Next. My mother. Calm. Controlled. Family is family, Elena. You need to call me. Next. My brother. Talking fast. I've got this business idea, and I just need a little backing to get started. I kept listening, one after another. Different voices. Different excuses. Same ending. Help me. Not one apology. Not one question about my life. Not one moment of silence. Just requests. I leaned back in my chair and stared at the ceiling for a long time. 7 years. And the first time they reached out was the moment they thought I could give them something. I picked up the phone, turned the sound off, and set it face down on the desk. Then I made a decision. I wasn't going to react. Not this time. Because 2 weeks later, I was scheduled to fly back to Ohio for work. And none of them knew yet why. The trip to Ohio wasn't for my family. It was for work. A nonprofit development group in a small town had asked our firm to send someone to speak at their annual fundraiser. Margaret forwarded the email to me with a short note. You grew up in Ohio. You understand these communities. You should take this one. I almost said no without thinking. That reflex was still there. Distance first. Always distance. Then I opened the event attachment. Location, Millfield Community Center date, March 15th event chair, Diane Carter, my mother. I read the line twice to make sure I wasn't reading it wrong. Same spelling. Same town. Same name. For a few seconds, I just sat there, looking at the screen, not moving. 7 years without contact. 7 years of silence. And now my work was sending me back to the same building where half the town had heard I was unstable. I didn't feel angry. I felt organized. When something feels unreal, I make a list. Step 1, confirm the event. Step 2, confirm my role. Step 3, decide response. Step 4, do nothing until the decision is clear. I called Margaret. You still want me to do the fundraiser in Ohio? I asked. Yes, she said. You're the best person for it. They know I'm from that town? They asked for someone with that background. Why? No reason, I said. There was a pause on the line. Margaret knew me well enough not to ask questions when I sounded like that. Your call, she said. But I trust you. I hung up and looked at the event program again. My name was already printed. Elena Carter, Director of Operations, Hale Development Group, keynote speaker. I closed the file. Decision made. I was going. Not for revenge. Not for closure. Because it was my job. And I had learned a long time ago that work was one place where the rules stayed the same no matter how people felt. 3 days after the voicemails, the messages changed. The calls stopped. Emails started. The first one came to my work address. Subject line, your mother, no greeting. No small talk. After everything this family has done for you, you can't even return a call. I told people for years you were getting help. I protected your reputation. Family comes first whether you like it or not. I read it once. Then again. Then I saved it in a folder. Not to send to anyone. Just to keep. Evidence matters. Not for court. For memory. It's easy to doubt yourself when the same people tell the same story long enough. The next message came on LinkedIn. From my sister. Congratulations on your success. I'm glad you're doing well. I need a cosigner on a loan. It's not a lot. Family helps family. I didn't answer that one either. Then my brother posted something publicly. Someone sent me the screenshot. Funny how people forget where they came from once they get a fancy title. Family supported you your whole life, and this is how you repay them. 41 likes. Same as before. Different year. I saved that too. Not because I needed proof for anyone else. Because I needed proof for the mornings when I might wake up and wonder if I imagined everything. The week before the trip, my aunt called. She was the only one in the family who sounded nervous instead of angry. You're speaking at the fundraiser, aren't you? She asked. Yes. They didn't know, she said quietly. Your mother found out when the program was printed. I didn't say anything. She thinks you planned this, my aunt said. I didn't. I know. Another pause. They're all going to be there. I assume so. You don't have to come. Yes, I said. I do. After the call, I sat at my desk for a long time. Not thinking about what I would say. Thinking about what I would not say. That mattered more. I opened a notebook and wrote 3 lines. Do not argue, do not explain, do not react, then under it, one more. Let facts speak. The day before the flight, I packed one suitcase. Same size as the one I left with 7 years earlier. Different contents. Suit. Laptop. Folder with my notes for the speech. And the small wooden box my grandmother left me. I don't know why I packed it. Maybe because it was the only thing I took with me the first time. Maybe because I wanted to remember who I was before anyone told me I was wrong. The flight to Columbus was quiet. Rental car. Highway. Flat fields. Nothing had changed. The closer I got to Millfield, the slower I drove. Not because I was afraid. Because I wanted to arrive exactly the way I planned. Not early. Not late. On time. When I pulled into the parking lot of the community center, the building looked smaller than I remembered. White lights on the entrance. Cars lined up along the street. People already inside. Through the glass doors, I could see tables, banners, decorations. A volunteer met me at the side entrance. You must be Ms. Carter, she said, smiling. Yes, we're so glad you're here. Everyone's excited to hear you speak. I nodded and signed the registration sheet. She handed me my badge. I looked down at it for a second. Elena Carter, keynote speaker, then I stepped inside. From the hallway I could see the main room. Round tables. White tablecloths. People talking. And at the center table, facing the stage, my mother. My father next to her. My sister across from her. My brother near the buffet. 7 years. 20 feet away. None of them knew I was already in the building. I stood there for a moment without moving. Then I put the badge on, straightened my jacket, and walked toward the stage. The program said I was speaking at 7:15. It was 7:14. So I waited. At exactly 7:15, the pastor stepped to the podium. He thanked everyone for coming, talked about the fundraiser, the projects, the plans for the town. I stood behind the curtain near the stage entrance, holding my notes, but not looking at them. I didn't need to. I had given versions of this talk before. Different towns. Same topics. Budgets. Planning. Infrastructure. How small communities survive when the numbers don't look good. Normal things. Safe things. From where I was standing, I could see part of the room through the gap in the curtain. My mother was smiling at something someone said. My father had his hands folded in front of him. My sister was looking at her phone. My brother was eating. They looked exactly the same. That was the strange part. 7 years felt like a lifetime to me. To them, it looked like nothing had changed. And tonight, the pastor said, "We're honored to have a guest speaker who grew up right here in this county and now works in community development across the country." I heard a few people clap early. He continued. She started her career at the front desk of a small consulting office and now serves as Director of Operations for Hale Development Group. Please welcome Elena Carter. For a second, nobody reacted. Then I stepped out from behind the curtain. The lights were bright enough that I couldn't see every face right away, just shapes, movement, people turning in their chairs. Then the sound started. Applause. Polite at first, then louder. I walked to the podium, set my notes down, and adjusted the microphone. When I looked up, my eyes went straight to the center table. My mother was frozen, her hand still on the glass in front of her. My father staring at the stage like he wasn't sure what he was seeing. My sister's mouth slightly open. My brother halfway turned in his chair. No one at that table was clapping. Everyone around them was. I waited until the room got quiet. Not rushing. Never rush silence. "Thank you," I said. "It's good to be back in Millfield." A few people laughed softly, surprised. I started the speech the way I always did, talking about small towns, about funding, about how communities hold together when resources are limited. Facts, numbers, examples. I kept my voice steady. No stories about my family. No personal details. Just work. About 15 minutes in, I turned the page in my notes, even though I didn't need to, and paused for a second. Then I said, "I grew up in a town a lot like this one." The room got quieter. Some of you might remember me. Some of you might not. I left here about 7 years ago with one suitcase and not much of a plan. A few heads turned toward the center table. I didn't look there. When people talk about community, they usually talk about support, I continued. But sometimes the most important thing a person can find is distance. No one moved. You can't build anything stable if the ground under you keeps shifting. Sometimes the only way to move forward is to step outside the story other people wrote for you. Still no names. Still no accusations. Just words. Where I work now, we deal with numbers every day. Budgets. Contracts. Timelines. Numbers don't care what anyone says about you. They only show what's there. I let that sit for a moment. Then I finished the rest of the speech the way it was written. Projects. Results. Future plans. Nothing dramatic. When I stepped away from the podium, the room stood up. Not everyone at once, but enough that the sound filled the whole hall. Applause again. Longer this time. I nodded, thanked the pastor, and walked off the stage the same way I always did. No hurry. No looking back. The reception started right after. People came up to shake my hand, introduce themselves, ask about the company, the projects, the work. Some of them recognized me from when I was younger. Most didn't. That was fine. I was talking to a couple from the town council when I felt someone step close behind me. I didn't turn right away. I finished the sentence I was saying. Then I faced her. My mother was standing there, smiling. The same smile she used at the dinner table. Tight. Careful. For the audience. "Elena," she said, opening her arms slightly like she expected a hug. What a surprise. I didn't move. "You had my number," I said. The smile flickered for half a second. "We've been trying to reach you," she said quietly. "You didn't answer." I listened to the messages. My sister stepped closer. "We need to talk," she said. "This isn't the place." "It wasn't the place 7 years ago either," I said. My father looked at the floor. My brother crossed his arms. My mother lowered her voice. "You embarrassed this family tonight. I talked about my job. You knew what you were doing." "I did my job," I said. My sister leaned in. "We're in trouble, Elena. We need help." There it was again. Same words. Same tone as the voicemails. "Help me." I nodded once. "I heard that part," I said. My father finally spoke. "Let's not do this here." "You had 7 years to not do this here," I said. No one answered. People nearby were pretending not to listen, but they weren't very good at it. I straightened my jacket. "I have to leave," I said. "My flight is early." My mother grabbed my arm lightly, just enough to stop me. "You owe this family," she whispered. I looked at her hand, then at her face. "No," I said calmly. "I don't." I stepped back, picked up my coat, and walked toward the exit. No one followed. Outside, the air was cold enough to make my eyes water. I stood in the parking lot for a minute, keys in my hand, breathing slowly. Inside the building, I could see people moving from table to table, talking. The story was already changing. 7 years of one version, one night of another. I got in the car, closed the door, and sat there without starting the engine. Then my phone buzzed on the seat next to me. New message. From my father. I didn't open it right away. I just looked at the screen and waited. I didn't read my father's message until I got back to the hotel. Not in the car. Not in the parking lot. I've learned that when something matters, it's better to sit down first. I put my suitcase on the chair, took off my jacket, and then opened the phone. The message was short. "Can we talk tomorrow? Just you and me. No explanation. No excuses. Just that." I didn't answer right away. Instead, I opened my laptop and pulled up the folder I had saved a few weeks earlier. Emails. Screenshots. Dates. Not because I planned to use them, because I didn't want to rely on memory alone. When things get emotional, memory changes. Documents don't. The next morning, I called the number my aunt had given me months before, the lawyer who handled my grandmother's estate, Mr. Whitaker. He was retired, but his voicemail still worked. He called back an hour later. His voice sounded older than I remembered, but steady. "Elena Carter?" he asked. "Yes. I was wondering if you might call someday." We talked for a few minutes about my grandmother first. He remembered her clearly. Said she had come to his office twice to make sure the paperwork was written exactly the way she wanted. 2 accounts. 2 names. 2 signatures required. No one could access one without the other, he said. "That's what she told me too," I said. There was a pause. Then he sighed. "I didn't know the transfer had been changed until later," he said. "By the time I saw the records, the money had already been moved." "My mother signed for me," I said. "Yes." He didn't try to soften it. "She shouldn't have been able to," he said. "But she brought a form with your name on it. The bank accepted it. By the time anyone questioned it, the statute period was already running." "How much was it?" I asked. $12,000, he said. "For you. 12 for your sister." I nodded even though he couldn't see me. "I'm not calling to recover it," I said. "I didn't think you were." We were quiet for a moment. "You sound like your grandmother," he said finally. "She never cared about the money either. She cared about things being right." After the call, I sat at the desk in the hotel room for a long time. The number didn't matter anymore. $12,000 wouldn't change my life now. But the fact that it happened the way it did, that explained everything. Why my mother reacted the way she did at that dinner. Why she needed everyone to believe I was unstable. Why the story never changed. If I was the problem, she never had to explain the paperwork. That afternoon, I met my father at a diner off the highway. Neutral place. Public. Quiet. He was already there when I walked in, sitting in a booth with his hands folded on the table. He stood up when he saw me. For a second, he looked like he wasn't sure if he should hug me. He didn't. We sat down. Ordered coffee. Didn't talk until the waitress left. "I got your message," he said. "I know." He stared at the cup for a while. "I should have stopped it," he said finally. I didn't ask what he meant. He kept going. "The fund. The way your mother talked about you. The night you left. All of it. His voice stayed low. I told myself I was keeping the peace, he said. But really, I just didn't want the fight. I nodded. That sounds right, I said. He flinched a little at that, but he didn't argue. She told everyone you were getting help, he said. I didn't correct her. I know. I read the article about you, he said after a moment. The one online. The company thing. I didn't say anything. You look steady, he said. That's the goal, I said. He nodded slowly. I'm sorry, he said. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just the words. I let the silence sit there for a few seconds. Then I spoke. I'm not lending money, I said. He looked up. I didn't ask, I know. But they will. He didn't argue with that either. I'm not co-signing anything. I'm not sending anything. I'm not fixing anything, I said. If anyone wants a relationship with me, it starts with the truth, not with help. He rubbed his hands together once, like he always used to when he didn't know what to do. That's fair, he said. We finished the coffee without talking much more. When we stood up to leave, he hesitated again. You doing okay out there? He asked. Yes. He nodded. Good. That was it. No hug. No speech. Just a small nod, like we both understood the rules now. That night, back in Tacoma, I wrote one email. One message. Send to my mother, my sister, and my brother. I kept it short. I'm not co-signing loans. I'm not sending money. I'm not investing in anything. If you want a relationship with me, it starts with an honest conversation about what happened. Not later. Not someday. Now. Until then, I wish you well, but my answer is no. I read it once. Didn't change anything. Press send. Then I closed the laptop, made tea, and sat at the kitchen table in my apartment with the lights off. No shaking. No anger. Just quiet. 7 years ago, I left that house with $200 and no plan. Now I had a job, a routine, a place that felt like mine. And for the first time, I didn't feel like I owed anyone an explanation for it. A week later, the town had already decided what the story was. Not the one my mother told. The one people saw with their own eyes. And stories change fast when there are documents to prove them wrong. That's when my aunt called again. This time, her voice sounded different. Not nervous. Not apologizing. Just tired. She said, you should know, things here aren't the same anymore. When my aunt said things weren't the same anymore, she didn't mean anything dramatic. She meant the kind of change that happens slowly, the way small towns adjust when a story stops making sense. People had seen me at the fundraiser. They had heard the speech. They had looked up the article online. Once that happens, no one needs an argument. They just start putting the pieces together on their own. My mother stepped down from the fundraiser committee a week later. Officially, she said she needed to focus on family. Unofficially, people had started asking questions she couldn't answer the same way anymore. My sister lost the house 2 months after that. Without a cosigner, the loan didn't go through. She moved back into my parents' place, into the same bedroom I used when I was a kid. My aunt told me that part quietly, like she didn't want it to sound like gossip. I didn't feel proud when I heard it. I didn't feel guilty either. Just neutral. Some things fall apart because they were built on the wrong plan to begin with. My brother stopped posting online after his girlfriend saw the message he wrote about me. Apparently, she didn't like the way he talked about family when money was involved. He sent me one text a few weeks later. Sorry. No explanation. No follow-up. Just the word. I didn't answer. Not because I was angry. Because I didn't know what answering would change yet. My father wrote me one more letter. Actual paper. Same careful handwriting. He said he was trying to do better. Said he understood that silence can hurt just as much as yelling. I kept the letter. Didn't reply right away. Some things don't need to be rushed. Back in Tacoma, my life went back to its usual rhythm. Work during the week. Groceries on Saturday. Laundry on Sunday morning. Sunday night dinners became a habit without anyone planning it. Margaret sometimes came over. A couple people from the office. My neighbor from downstairs who always brought too much bread. Nothing fancy. Cheap wine. Mismatched plates. People talking over each other about normal things. One night, I was standing at the sink rinsing dishes while everyone argued about whether the Mariners would ever have a good season again. Water running, window open, cool air coming in. For a second, I stopped and just listened. No one was watching what I said. No one was waiting for me to mess something up. No one was telling a story about me in the next room. Just noise. Normal noise. That's when I realized something I hadn't noticed before. I wasn't tense anymore. Not at the table. Not at home. Not at work. It took 7 years, but my life finally felt like it belonged to me. A few months after the trip, I used part of my savings to set up a small scholarship at the community college here. Nothing huge. Just enough to help one student a year who didn't have family support on their paperwork. I named it after my grandmother. Not because of the money she left. Because she was the only person in that house who ever told me I didn't have to stay somewhere that hurt. The first time the college sent me a thank you letter from one of the students, I put it in the same wooden box I carried with me when I left Ohio. I still keep that box in my closet. Not as a reminder of what happened. As a reminder of what I walked away from and what I built instead. Every once in a while, I get a message from someone I don't know. Someone who heard part of the story from somebody else. Usually it starts the same way. My family thinks I'm the problem too. When that happens, I don't give speeches. I just tell them the same thing I learned the hard way. You don't fix your life by arguing with people who need you to stay the same. You fix it by building something steady somewhere else. And sometimes, years later, the phone rings again. Not because they miss you, because they finally see you. If you stayed with me through this story, I appreciate it. If it felt familiar in any way, you're not the only one. Before you go, take a second to like the video and subscribe to the channel. It helps more people find stories like this, and it keeps this little community going. And I'm always curious where people are listening from, so leave a comment with your city and what time it is there right now. 2 more stories are on the screen next, and one of them starts in a kitchen a lot like mine, with another phone call nobody expected.